Okay, everybody, welcome to our final lesson in this wonderful, wonderful series, Journey of the Soul. I hope you're enjoying the journey as much as I am. I've learned a lot, and I hope we continue to learn after this. So, the past 5 weeks, we spent a lot of time talking about dying. And today, we want to talk about how that affects the living, because the class is for all of us here on this earth. So we should really learn a lesson and how it affects our daily life. So they tell the story of the 60-year-old man goes to a doctor, and he's in great shape. The doctor says, it's unbelievable. I've never seen someone like this. He says, you have a body of a 35-year-old. Says, you're in great health. Tell me, when did your father die? He says, die? Who says my father's dead? He's 82 years old. He's alive. He's active. He goes skiing 3 times a year. He goes surfing 3 times a week. The doctor says, unbelievable. So he says, when did your grandfather die? My grandfather? Who said he's dead? He said, he's 106, and he still goes walking every day and hiking. In fact, he's getting married next week. Getting married at 106? Who would want to get married at 106? Who said he wants to get married? His parents are pressuring him. So we have to focus and figure out a way that all we learned the past 5 weeks should influence what we're doing here with our days. As much as I went to a guy today, and the guy had is bald over here and around, and we were kidding around. That okay, you get older, you lose your hair, and deal with it. I said, I'm on the way. But the stay young industry with makeup and hair and creams and rejuvenation, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. So many people are fighting the aging process, and they want to stay young. And it's interesting to see, what does Judaism have to say about age, about retirement, about death. And we're going to learn tonight something very interesting. Number one, we're going to talk about how the concept of death the concept of our own mortality can influence every day. And then we're going to talk about the concept of death itself. Is it, like the saying goes, so absolute, like death and taxes? Or can we cheat it? Can we do away with it? It's going to be a fascinating topic. And again, I want to make sure that you guys ask questions whenever something you feel can be better explained, or you have a question. I will do my best to answer, and I will be posting links to various articles in the chat. Okay. Are there any benefits to contemplating our own mortality? But let's talk about aging. There's a very interesting Gemara that says that Avram was, even though he was an older gentleman, he looked very young. In fact, when Yitzchak was born and Yitzchak was growing up, Avram looked so good for his age, people confused Yitzchak as a young man and Avram. And Avram prayed to God to look old. And it says, Avram Zakin, Avram was old. I mean, obviously we know how old he was. Why does the Torah tell us and he's old? So the Gemara clarifies that he actually asked to be old. This is something totally contrary to what's going on today. And the question is why. So let's look at the introduction to the chapter on page 210. This chapter, the climax of the journey of the soul, unwraps one of the greatest gifts afforded to us all. but the information and insights collected in the previous chapters, a gift enabled by the fact that the dread of death greatly mitigated by the previous clarifications of the nature of the soul and its pleasurable destination in the higher worlds. So we learned a lot about in the past 5 weeks, and hopefully that a person shouldn't have such tremendous phobia. Let's do the exercise. We'll ask the question. You've almost completed the journey in Judaism's approach to death, afterlife, and reincarnation. Take a moment to identify 3 perspectives that can influence your own life, and maybe afterwards we'll come back to it, and hopefully toward the end we can ask, and you'll be comfortable enough to share some of the lessons you gained. But let's just do a quick synopsis of the things we've learned in the past few weeks. So in the beginning, we dealt with this fear of death, temperature phobia, something like that, and we learned no need to fear death, because who are you really? Death is not the end of you. You are really the soul, and the soul is the real you, and what death is really is the soul separating from the body. So the body is temporary; it's a temporary container for the soul, but the soul always lives on. A person doesn't die, because if you're living, if you're alive, you're alive. So the body was never alive; the body was animated. And after the soul's journey in the body, the body is no longer animated, but the soul remains alive. The body was never alive. So what we call death, the better word would be separation. And after accomplishing so much in this world, and we spent a tremendous time, and we are going to reinforce this concept tonight, that the main thing is down here, with the soul is in the body, and accomplishing mitzvot, learning Torah. And when the soul, after the soul finishes its mission here, it enjoys the pleasure and the fruits of its labor in the world to come. Okay, right? So far so good? Any questions before we move on? Okay, so I'll take it as a no. So as we said before, Abraham asked to become old. Why? Because it says that Abraham wanted a reminder that time is not unlimited, that we all have a certain amount of time, and he wanted to capitalize on the time. So the exercise in 6.2, page 211, the question is, do you think there's thinking about death, it could be crucial to live a meaningful life? Are there any benefits to living? Any benefits to occasionally contemplating our own mortality? Anyone want to weigh in over here?
I'm unmute.
Well, you can unmute yourselves.
I'm in my car. I don't have unmute.
No, you're unmuted. Was it Steve?
I am?
Yes.
Do I think there is? Yes, I think there is.
So what is it? What do you say?
I think, time, I think for myself, I think in time that I need to start doing things because there'll be an end to this. I know listening to you, that after the separation, I'll continue, but I think I see the end nearing and my time to do things in my life shortening. So yes, I contemplate it often.
Okay, and actually we're going to talk about the need to contemplate it at times. Anyone else? Okay, guys, come on. This is lesson 6. You guys got to be more proactive. Participate. It's okay. I ain't gonna bite you off. And listen, the good news is that you have a couple of weeks break until after Pesach, and then we start the next course. But let's think about that. In the past years, there have been numerous. I'm going to open up the chat, and I'm going to open up the chat, and I'm going to. The time is limited, and the age looks like it went faster and faster. Need to know now what's important. That's very, very true, Very true, Gabriel. So I'm gonna post a link to an article now that where are we? Is this the article? I think this is it. Work longer, live healthy. The relationship with economic activity, health, and government. No, that's the wrong article. Sorry. Okay. I'm by mistake closed that. I'm going to post the article later. But there's an article, and part of it I'm going to quote. It basically says that it's called positive psychology, that contemplating a person's own mortality serves the benefits. I don't know if you remember in lesson 1, there was something called the TNT, the terror management theory. What do we do about things that we are afraid of? What we basically do is we kind of we deny it. We store it away. We don't think about it. The positive psychology theory is you think about it and you use it as a motivator to do good. In fact, there is an app. It's called WeCroak. Anyone ever hear of this app? WeCroak. So this app looks like this, and it sends you like 5 reminders a day that don't forget you can do it in App Store or whatever it is. Don't forget it says you're going to die, and the 5 reminders a day, and basically to focus on what's important and not to waste time on what's not important. Here I found the article. I put it in the chat, and the concept is that when you remember that time is limited and you don't have unlimited time, so then you try to do more of your day. So the benefits of contemplating mortality can be, number 1, that you prioritize and you remain focused on what's important. You don't let the small things bother you, and you weigh decisions more. You try to avoid foolish mistakes, and you embrace every moment. I remember I was watching a video of Bibi Netanyahu before a news conference, and this was before it became official. And everyone's taking pictures. And he's asking, "What are you guys all taking pictures of?" So someone says, "So we have remembrance." So he says, "But what about living life? You guys are so busy taking pictures, you're forgetting to live the moment." And after that, I try, not always, I try take a video of 2 minutes, and then you just try to soak it in, because so often we're viewing life through the camera instead of just embracing the moment. And we try to live life more fully, and then life becomes more functional and more meaningful, not just functional. We're looking to accomplish things that count. So if you look at text number 1 on page 211, it says there is no exercise or reflection as potent, perhaps as contacting one's ending. In confronting our own passing, we are able and more willing to help others see the power of awareness, of which that is inevitable. Death, helping us to wake up to the tender colors of life and personal creation. In contemplating our own end, we recognize that there is still time for life in whatever time is left. Values are there to be lived until that last inevitable moment. To acknowledge that it is freeing. This was the 2015 study I posted. The link. Tells us that sometimes we think it's morbid. Oh my God, stop being so dark. But in reality, there is good. There is good to stop and think to yourself. There's benefit and there's blessing to stop and become aware that we're not immortal. We're not Superman. We don't live forever, and we're given a limited amount of time. And the question is, what are we going to do? So going back to Abraham, why did he want signs of aging? Because when we age, when the wrinkles come and and we're not as strong as we used to be. The young people live forever, so the cheapest time to buy life insurance is when you're young. The hardest people to sell life insurance to are the young people, because they're going to live forever. But in reality, signs of aging are also a blessing, because it's a reminder, God's gentle reminder, that maybe we should start occupying ourselves with meaningful actions and not just wasteful actions. Any questions?
No.
All right. Where's my so far everything makes sense. All right. So let's look at what the Torah says. What does the Torah say? How often, when, and how should we contemplate our own mortality? Should we do it all the time? What we know is that a person is supposed to lead a purpose-driven life. What's a good purpose, a godly purpose? That is what the Torah says. But we know from personal experience that there's the impulse to do what's wasteful or temporarily pleasurable, and then there's our conscious, Yetzer Tov, the godly soul, which is telling us to do something which is purposeful. So how do we overcome the urge to do something temporarily pleasurable, to do something that's eternally purposeful? So let's look at text 2a. King David also had this question, and he writes like this. This is from Psalm chapter 4, and he says, page 212. Rigzu val techetu, be agitated and do not sin. Imrubu vavchem, verbalize within your hearts. Al mishkavchem, upon your beds. The doimu sela, and forever be silent. Let's go to there is a simple meaning. Let's go to the Talmudic understanding of what this verse is telling us. Text 2b. It's saying like this: we should always agitate our good inclination against our evil inclination. That means, as it's stated, be agitated and don't sin. That means, Chassidus explains that the evil inclination is going to try to trick you, is going to try to convince you that what you're doing is not really so bad. So you have to be vigilant against the impulses and the sly arguments of the evil inclination. But what if that doesn't work? If it works, fine. But what if it doesn't work? Then you have to occupy yourself with the words of Torah. Because when you learn Torah, you'll have the tools to fight the Yetzer Hara. But what if that doesn't work? Then you say Shema at night. You're supposed to say Shema twice a day, in the morning and also before we go to bed. And in the Shema, the bedtime Shema, it talks about our proper frame of mind. But what if that doesn't work? So at the end, it says we contemplate our end. So here we see, interestingly, when and how a person is supposed to contemplate it. Text Appendix A, which is on page 371, has more about it. Has the Mishnah from Pirkei Avos look at three things, and sorry, it's not page 371. Sorry, it's page 237, right? No, 230.
35.
230. No, 232. Sorry, 232. 232. Three things to consider, and Rabbi Yonah of Girona talks about. We talk about the temporary nature of physical pleasures, and then you have a 234. You have the mimer of the previous Rebbe, who says everybody has it in their mind that they have to eat at this time, they have to go to business at this time, but they're learning. Yeah, we're supposed to learn, but it gets canceled, and sometimes it's not at all. But if you would understand the eternal nature of good deeds of learning and the temporary nature of eating, drinking, and work, then it would be vice versa. Let's watch a video where it talks about how we have a true frame of mind, how it really should be.
Dynamite, from the ancient Greek term for power, is a potent material indeed. But a person can hardly encounter a more powerful motivator to plan for his day of death than the opportunity to read his own obituary in the media. Alfred Nobel was a 19th century Swedish chemist and engineer with 350 different patents. He owned 90 factories that manufactured armaments and was the inventor of dynamite. His brothers Ludwig and Robert Nobel were tycoons with oil fields along the Caspian Sea. Alfred invested in his brother's enterprise and he grew ever wealthier. Then, in 1888, Ludwig Nobel died suddenly while on a visit to Cannes, France. The passing of one of the Nobel magnates was exceptionally newsworthy. In their haste to hammer out the headlines, the French newspapers misidentified the deceased, mistakenly reporting that Alfred Nobel had died. Alfred was shocked to read of his own passing. He was deeply disturbed at the far from flattering obituaries. Bold black headlines screamed, "The Merchant of Death is dead." The fine print was no better. Dr. Alfred Nobel, who became rich by finding ways to kill more people faster than ever before, died yesterday. Alfred was sobered by an experience afforded few. Is this how I will be remembered when my time comes, he wondered? Will I be forever tainted as the merchant of death? Historians speculate that Alfred, determined to improve his genuine obituary by improving his lasting effect on humanity, took steps while still hale and hearty to ensure that mankind would remember him as an everlasting contributor to the advance of civilization and quality of life. On November 27, 1895, Alfred Nobel signed his last will and testament, designating 94% of his vast fortune to the creation of the Nobel Prizes. To this day, his name is synonymous with the advance of science, medicine, literature, and world peace. All it took to transform a merchant of death into an angel of progress and peace was a moment of serious reflection on mortality and its consequences.
I think it's very, very powerful when someone sees their own obituary and gets to think, how are you going to be remembered? So the question is, I mean, I think we can agree that contemplating this kind of thing, our own end of days, oops, let me let someone else in, our own end of days, does help us live a more purposeful life. Now, it doesn't mean that you always have to walk around and thinking about it, because that'll really lead someone to be morbid and depressed. What the Gemara is telling you based on the verse is that there are steps that ultimately, once in a while, it is proper to think about this. Now, it cannot allow us to become depressed, because we know the adage that we have to serve Hashem with joy, but it is important, because without it, we tend to get focused on what's really not important. Like that old joke that goes, that Steinberg and Frisch, they owned a coat company, and they bet on the market that the newest thing is going to be these leather coats, and just the winter came and there was a harsh winter and people needed heavier coats. No one bought their coats, and they're about to go under. One day, the Australian man walks in and says, "Tell me, do you any chance have waist length leather coats? I'm interested in buying a few." So one partner looks at the other partner and says, "Yeah, we have a few. I'm looking to buy." How much looking to buy? A few thousand. They go, said, "Yeah, I think we have that." Says, "I'll take the whole lot, but do me a favor, before I do it, I have to check with my home office to make sure that it's okay. Listen here, the deal's a deal. unless you hear from me by Friday, it's going to go through. If you receive a telegram, before the weekend, then everything is good. So Tuesday passes, Wednesday passes, Thursday passes, comes Friday. The Steinberg and Frisch, they're all nervous that because they want the business to go through. It's getting close to closing. All of a sudden, there's a knock on the door. Delivery man, telegram. They're all shaking. Steinberg opens the telegram with nervous hands. He's shaking. He opens it up. All of a sudden, he smiles. Frisch, good news. Your sister died. So, but unfortunately, this is, I know it's very callous to make a joke like that, but unfortunately, this is what people think. You guys ever heard of YOLO? YOLO? YOLO?
You only live once.
You only live once. So this is a common expression. What is you only live once? You only live once means that, listen, you only live once, you only have a certain amount of days, so you have to fill it up with what? With a bucket list. The whole concept of a bucket list, the whole way you approaching it, that it's a very callous and very derogatory and disrespectful way. I'm going to fill my days with.
Come on.
What? Oh, with experiences that are passing, that are empty. The Jewish YOLO is, yes, you only live once. Therefore, what are you going to do? You got to fill the days with meaningful experiences. Don't waste a day. Like growing up, my parents and my teachers would say, "Chaperein, take advantage of today. Today is a special day. Today is a gift. Fill this day because you only live once. Not to do something that's that's meaningless." I'm going to play a video. Remember the story, the miracle on the Hudson, right? So watch this video clip. It's a short clip of someone who's sitting on the plane.
So imagine a big explosion as you climb through 3,000 feet. Imagine a plane full of smoke. Imagine an engine going clack, 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 clack. Sounds scary. Well, I had a unique seat that day. I was sitting in 1D. I was the only one who could talk to the flight attendants. So I looked at them right away, and they said, "No problem. We probably hit some birds." The pilot had already turned the plane around, and we weren't that far. You could see Manhattan. 2 minutes later, 3 things happen at the same time. The pilot lines up the plane with the Hudson River. It's usually not the route. He turns off the engines. Now imagine being on a plane with no sound. And then he says 3 words, as unemotional 3 words as I've ever heard. He says, "Brace for impact." I didn't have to talk to the flight attendant anymore. I could see in her eyes, it was terror. Life was over. And I want to share with you 3 things I learned about myself that day. I learned that it all changes in an instant. We have this bucket list, we have these things we want to do in life, and I thought about all the people I wanted to reach out that I didn't, all the fences I wanted to mend, all the experiences I wanted to have and I never did. As I thought about that, later on I came up with a saying, which is, I collect bad wines. Because if the wine is ready and the person is there, I'm opening it. I no longer want to postpone anything in life. And that urgency, that purpose has really changed my life. The second thing I learned that day, and this is as we clear the George Washington Bridge, which was by not a lot, I thought about, wow, I really feel one real regret. I've lived a good life. In my own humanity and mistakes, I've tried to get better at everything I've tried. But in my humanity, I also allow my ego to get in. And I regretted the time I wasted in things that did not matter with people that matter. And I thought about my relationship with my wife, with my friends, with people. And after, as I reflected on that, I decided to eliminate negative energy from my life. It's not perfect. It's a lot better. I've not had a fight with my wife in 2 years. It feels great. I'm no longer trying to be right. I choose to be happy. The third thing I learned, and this is as your mental clock starts going 15, 14, 13, you can see the water coming. I'm saying, please blow up. Right? I don't want this thing to break in 20 pieces like you've seen in those documentaries. And as we're coming down, I had a sense of, wow, dying is not scary. It's almost like we've been preparing for it our whole lives. But it was very sad. I didn't want to go. I love my life. And that sadness really framed in one thought, which is, I only wish for one thing. I only wish I could see my kids grow up. About a month later, I was in a performance by my daughter, first grader, not much artistic talent, yet. And I'm bawling, I'm crying like a little kid. And it made all the sense in the world to me. I realized at that point, by connecting those two dots, that the only thing that matters in my life is being a great dad. Above all, the only goal I have in life is to be a good dad. I was given the gift of a miracle, of not dying that day. I was given another gift, which was to be able to see into the future and come back and live differently. I challenge you guys that are flying today. Imagine the same thing happens on your plane, and please don't. But imagine, and how would you change? What would you get done that you're waiting to get done because you think you'll be here forever? How would you change your relationships and the negative energy in them? And more than anything, are you being the best parent you can? Thank you.
So, I included 2 videos, but the idea is like this: the human approach has always been, eat, drink, and tomorrow, for tomorrow we die. Even in the book of the Torah, in the Tanakh, the prophet Isaiah rebukes the people, and he says, who say, let us eat and drink, for tomorrow we will die. So this is not like a new problem. This is, in general, a people problem. We like to enjoy now, and we don't think about how do we maximize our time. No one's saying you can't enjoy life. You enjoy life, but enjoy doing purposeful things. Not only that, when you do purposeful things, it makes you feel better about yourself. It makes you enjoy life more. I was talking today, people always tell me, Rabbi, you got to start doing exercise. So someone was telling me today, saying, Rabbi, I woke up this morning and I didn't want to do exercise and feel well, but I did it anyway, and I feel great. And because when you do something purposeful, you feel good. So every once in a while, we have to think, is my action purposeful? And just in case you get too caught up in yourself, you got to think, is it really worth it? Let's listen to Rabbi Shais Tau, and he gives us a meditation on the Mishnah that talks about the meditation.
For our meditation reflection for this final lesson of the Journey of the Soul course, we're going to take a meditation straight from our sages, from Pirkei Avot, the Ethics of the Fathers, which tells us to meditate upon 3 things. Imagine, if you will, that there's an eye that sees, an ear that hears, and all of your deeds are written in a book. Now, that's something that for centuries would have taken imagination. But in our day and age, It doesn't take any imagination at all, because we know that everything is seen, heard, and recorded. What we're going to do now is imagining ourselves at the end of our lives in the editing room, so to speak, with all the footage, all of the film, all of the recordings, every moment of our lives. It's there for review, to rewatch, to relive. Imagine yourself now looking back through your life, watching the real-time movie of every single second. See yourself in every place where you've been, every person you've ever met, even if you passed them in an elevator for 5 seconds. And now, let's start to edit and form our highlight film. And of course, what does a highlight film mean? Now that the soul has left the body, the highlights are not which restaurants I ate at or where I went on vacation. The soul now has moved on from a body. The highlights are, what good did I do in this world? Who did I love? Who did I help? Start to imagine your life. Start to reflect on the real highlight film. Those small fleeting moments that were over in seconds, but last forever. Who did you help? Who did you help? How did you make the world a better place? And now realize that we're not editing just yet. We're still filming. We're still making the movie. Imagine yourself now, you're still filming the movie. Visualize it. You're in the director's chair. What scene will you direct? We'll take a moment to visualize and reflect.
Okay, powerful stuff. Let's move on to the questions on page 214. Seem like simple questions, almost foolish questions, but they're not. 214, which do you consider greater value, time or money?
Time.
Time. You don't have to answer this question out loud, but answer this question to yourself honestly. Are you living a life in a manner that is consistent with the answer you just provided? Now, most people probably answered, if you didn't unmute yourself, that time is more valuable. But most of us don't live by that truth. That's just a reality. We all know that time is more valuable, but we spend more time worrying about money. That's why the adage on text number 3 is people fret over a lost dime and fail to fret over lost time. Money provides no reprieve, while time is impossible to retrieve. That's just reality. We're so worried about money, and we waste so much time worrying about it. Like that old joke, that barrel old man is lying on his deathbed, and one of his last breaths, he says, "Moshe, are you here?" So Moshe says, "Yes, Father, I'm here." And he says, "Yaakov, you here?" He says, "Yes, I'm here." "Sorry, you here?" "Yes, Tati, I'm here." And Zelig, "Yes, I'm here." So the guy Beryl is dying. He says, if you're all here, who's in the store? Unfortunately, this is the reality. So if I asked you a question, again, silly question, stupid question. Either I'll give you 1,000, it says you can waste a day or spend $1,000. Which would you choose? Now, everyone's but how many people would say, no, we're talking, I'm not going to give you $1,000. I'll stay in bed. But the fact of the matter is that money comes and goes. Time doesn't. There's an English word called fungible. Fungible means replaceable. So you go to the store, you buy a can of soup. That can of soup is not unique. You could replace it with another can of soup, different can of soup. Time, like your kids, sometimes, you imagine a parent goes to school, drops off their kid. They don't come back and say, all right, just give me one. I don't really care whichever one it is. I just got to come back with one. Time, Manish Friedman, Manish Friedman has 14 kids. Some people ask him, you have 14 kids? He says, no, I have one of each. They're not interchangeable. Time isn't fungible. And listen to Steve Jobs, last video for the day. Listen to Steve Jobs, who talks about this. Sorry, not Steve Jobs, sorry, Jack Benny. He made a great line of this. Sorry, not yet. Where is it? Yep. And this.
Hey, Bud. Bud.
Huh?
Got a match?
Match? Yes, I have one right here.
Don't make a move. This is a stick-up.
What?
You heard me.
Mister, put down that gun.
Shut up. Now, come on. Your money or your life? Look, Bud. I said your money or your life. I'm thinking it over.
All right, so Jack Benny made a whole joke, but it's true. So why do so many people care about their money and more about their wasted time? So what's the benefit of this contemplation? Text number 4, the Midrash says, if not for the fear of angel of death, who knows what people will do? Let us learn from the 10 generations of humanity. God showered them with abundant paradise, like goodness, yet they're on the brink of destroying the world. Let me give some background. Let me explain. The Midrash says something very fascinating. That if you read in the book of Genesis, the very first chapter, people lived an incredibly long time. And we said Abraham got old and Jacob got sick. So the Midrash says that before the Mabul, before the deluge, before the flood, people lived for a long time and they didn't get sick and the world was full of bounty. Life was great. Why? Because God wanted to remove any impediment to doing good things. But instead of using their time for productivity, instead of using their time for purposeful, positive action, they just became corrupted and they spent their time thinking, how do I get the better? How do I hurt another person? They didn't value their time. They used their time very poorly. Why? Because imagine you lived 800 years and I gave you a job. Would you start it right away? You would think, yeah, big deal. I have another 700 years. There's an old joke. This guy sitting at a seminar, and this guy saying we have to do something about global warming because the world's coming to an end, and the sun is going to run out of gas in 500 billion years. And someone gets up and says, "Oh my God, we have to start doing something. We're all going to die." And the professor said, "Whoa, dude, relax. We got 500 billion years." Oh, the student says, 500 billion. I'm sorry, I thought you meant 500 million. But that is the attitude that people pre the flood with Noah had. We don't got to do things now. We have plenty of time. So the benefit of sometimes contemplating our limited amount of days is it helps us frame life. It's not to focus on death, the morbidity and the sadness. It's to help us squeeze out the most juice of every day. It helps us frame life. When we think we're going to live forever, then there's no urgency. So now, listen to the Steve Jobs, who refused to get treatment and then realized that his time is limited. Listen to this clip. And here we go.
My third story is about death. When I was 17, I read a quote that went something like, "If you live each day as if it was your last, someday you'll most certainly be right." It made an impression on me, and since then, for the past 33 years, I've looked in the mirror every morning and asked myself, if today were the last day of my life, would I want to do what I am about to do today? And whenever the answer has been no for too many days in a row, I know I need to change something. Remembering that I'll be dead soon is the most important tool I've ever encountered to help me make the big choices in life. Because almost everything, all external expectations, all pride, all fear of embarrassment or failure, these things just fall away in the face of death, leaving only what is truly important. Remembering that you are going to die is the best way I know to avoid the trap of thinking you have something to lose. You are already naked. There is no reason not to follow your heart. No one wants to die. Even people who want to go to heaven don't want to die to get there. And yet, death is the destination we all share. No one has ever escaped it. And that is as it should be, because death is very likely the single best invention of life.
So I think the last line is a great line. Death is the greatest invention of life. We're not looking to focus on the negative. What we're trying to do is to take advantage of every day. So why do we value money and we don't value time? Because we look at time as dispensable. It's one day, okay, I'll do it tomorrow. We look at time as it's disposable. I only have one. If you look at a dollar bill, every $100 bill has a number on it, and if I lose it, then that's it. It's gone. So the awareness of it, not so much the contemplation, but the awareness of it allows us to live a fuller life, or allows us to live life more fully. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai gave a great analogy. And he said, there was once a king who invited a bunch of people, a bunch of his ministers, to a banquet, but he didn't tell them when the banquet would be. So the smart ministers, they stayed dressed up because they said any moment the king can open the door and we want to be ready. The foolish minister said, well, obviously we're going to know when the banquet is because they have to prepare. So what are we going to do? We'll be in our regular clothing. We'll do our regular thing, and then we'll have time to prepare. Suddenly, the king opened the doors, and the ministers that were well prepared, they sat down. The king said, "You guys can stand and watch. You can't participate. We have to know that at any time that door can open, so we can focus on selfish desires and aspirations. We can think time." And we can say somehow some other alarm has our number. And these can all be a result of not sometimes taking it into account, but when we avoid it, when we sometimes think about it, and at the end of the day, or even once a week, or Rosh Chodesh, we think about, what am I accomplishing? That it helps us do more. It's a sad story, but it's a powerful story. It was a 16-year-old boy. His name was Miles 11. And in June 2005, he was diagnosed with a rare pediatric cancer. And it had less than 30% chance to get past 5 years, which is considered a threshold of survival. And he started blogging about his journey. Look at text number 5. And he gives a great analogy. He said, life is like when you go to the driving range, and you have a bucket of golf balls. In the beginning, you're just, hitting them, woo, who cares? But, and he says, eventually, I'm reading like towards the middle of the second paragraph, yet eventually, you have to reach down towards the bottom of the bucket to scavenge for another shot. And you realize that tries are running out. Now, just a handful left. Each swing becomes more meaningful. The right technique becomes more crucial. So between each shot, you take a couple of practice swings and a few deep breaths. There is a very strong need to end on a good note, even if every preceding shot was horrible. Getting it right at the end means a lot. You know, as you tee up your last ball, this is my final shot. I want to crush it with perfection. I must make this count. Limited quantities or limited time brings a new precious value and significance to everything you do. Live each day shooting as if it's your last shot. I know I have to. I found out today the 5-year survival rate is just under 30%. Unfortunately, he passed away 6 days shy of his 19th birthday in August 2007. So the bottom line is, life's too short to hold grudges. Life's too short to worry and to get bogged down by really trivial things. The question to you is, what else could you add? The question on 6.3, page 218. Life is too short to what? Anyone want to add something over here? Life is too short to what?
To procrastinate.
Procrastinate. Good. No, anyone else? Everyone's very quiet today. What happened? No one wants to chime in?
It's Monday and we're tired.
There's no TGIM. Thank God it's Monday.
Yeah, it doesn't
Life
work.
is too short.
Yeah,
Life
go ahead.
is too short to spend all your time on a Zoom conference.
Yeah, that's why that's why they call it soon. Thank you, Larry. Thank you. So this is life, really. The soul comes down with a mission. Imagine for a moment, before, if you don't know the difference. Yesterday, Mendy was playing outside in front yard. He said, "Tati, I found these precious stones." I'm like, "Yeah, Mendy, they're not really precious. Maybe they look a little different than rocks, but they're not really precious." Our neshama knows what diamonds are. The problem is that when our soul is vested inside the body, it gets confused between regular rocks and diamonds. So the soul comes into the world and wants to collect diamonds. But what happened is it gets busy with garbage. Schmaltz is fat. It gets busy with other things, and it gets so busy with the non-important stuff that it gets focused on schmaltz. Think about it. You think at the end anyone cares about cars? It cares about a nice house? That's not meaningful. Legacy. At the end, many times people think about legacy. So people want to make like Alfred Nobel. He created a whole organization because he cares about legacy. Many times people will dedicate, in their will, they'll say they want to leave something to an institution that's something special to them. Why? Because they care about legacy. They want to know that they'll have an impact after 120. Okay, let's move on. Okay, the golden years. Let's talk about getting old, because that's usually a step before everything else. A lot of people call Florida God's waiting room. People move down to Florida, they retire, and they're kind of just waiting. They're waiting for tomorrow. And unfortunately, society has a very, very negative view on older people. No, that's it. You're old. You're useless. You retire. You just over there. Judaism has a very, very different view of what it is, an older person. In fact, it says in Pirkei Avos, when a person turns 50, that's when it's a time to give advice. So look at text number 6. He says, Rabbi Yeshua says, this is the Gemara, those who are married in their younger decades should nevertheless marry in their old age. There's no such thing that a person stops being productive. Look at Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva became a teacher, and all 24,000 students of his died. It was a plague. All 24,000 died. By the way, connecting to last week, I forgot to mention this. Talking about Gilgal, 24,000 students of Rabbi Akiva were a reincarnation of the 24,000 Jews that died in the whole fiasco of the Midianite woman and the tribe of Shimon. That's for more on that, you can look in the book of Numbers. Anyway, and you would think the guys, in the 60s, 70s, as all the students passed away, and most people would say, okay, that's it. It was nice. I did good. Now I'm retiring. Rabbi Akiva says no. We learn from Rabbi Akiva that a person should never stop working. And in Appendix C, it says even if a person is very rich, he should still work. He should still work in his field, because when you work, when you're productive, you're happy. When you're not productive, I'm gonna look at figure 6.1 on page 222. I mean, the stats are incredible. But before we get to page 222, look at page 221. This is a quote from an article. I'm gonna post the whole article on the chat, and it says retirement can cause a drastic decline in health, according to a new study. Research by the Institute of Economic Affairs found that both mental and physical health can suffer after retirement. The study, Work Longer, Live Healthier, and the relationship between economic activity, shows that there's a small boost in health immediately after retirement, because just a few months of enjoying yourself. But after that, there's a significant deterioration. It suggests retirement increases the likelihood of suffering from clinical depression 40%, and it goes on. And I will post the article in the chat so everyone can see it. Now, it doesn't mean that if a person can't work as hard as he used to, it doesn't mean that he's useless. It means that now it's time that you lived a long time and you have decades of experience. It's time to share that experience. Instead of the youngsters making the same mistake, I once heard from an educator saying it's important for parents and grandparents to tell their children and grandchildren, let me tell you something that my father taught me. Those are powerful words. And look at text number 8. Text number 8 tells us we have to listen to the lesson of our parents and our grandparents. It says if the elders tell you to destroy, then you build. Why? Because destruction upon the elders advice of the elders is constructive, and construction upon the advice of the elders is destructive. It means when they're telling you to do something, that's constructive. That's constructive criticism. Not constructive criticism. It's constructive. It helps you. So there's no such thing as that a person gets old and now they just sit there and they're no good. No, now is the time to actually share some of that knowledge. Or now that you don't have to work so hard, now you can sit and dedicate to learn. So many years you were distracted with going to work, and now you can sit down and learn. I'm going to play with you that great line that Reagan said at the debate. Oh, here goes.
You already are the oldest president in history, and some of your staff say you retired after your most recent encounter with Mr. Mondale. I recall yet that President Kennedy had to go for days on end with very little sleep during the Cuba Missile Crisis. Is there any doubt in your mind that you would be able to function in such circumstances?
Not at all, Mr. Truitt, and I want you to know that also I will not make age an issue of this campaign. I am not going to exploit for political purposes my opponent's youth and inexperience. If I still have time, I might add, Mr. Truitt, I might add that it was Seneca or it was Cicero, I don't know which, that said, if it was not for the elders correcting the mistakes of the young, there would be no state.
All right, so again, these are great lines, but they teach us a very, very powerful lesson. I just posted the link for Nobel for Alfred Nobel. So we spoke about for the past 6 weeks about death, and death is definite, and we have to try to maximize our time. Let's take the last few moments, last minutes, talk about, is death inevitable? We all, the saying, everything is the only two sure things is death and taxes. But is it possible, plausible, that maybe death isn't inevitable, or maybe death isn't really natural? I know this sounds a little crazy what I'm saying, but let's follow according to what the Torah says. Text 9a. Let's follow the sequence of events. Hashem told Adam, don't eat from the tree. And the day you eat from the tree, you will die. Anyone have any questions on the text? Anybody?
Didn't die that day.
Exactly. Thank you, Michael J. He didn't die. He didn't die that day. So how can God say he didn't die? He didn't die. Well, is God, was God lying? So the answer is like this. Obviously, well, let's take a step back. Obviously, from the fact that God said on this day you will die, that means before you won't die, we can read that originally Adam and Eve were supposed to live forever. That means when God created the world and he created nature, daytime, right? Someone asking you a question? Oh, sorry. When God created the world, right? Nature, animals, time, sun, moon. He created man, Adam and Eve. They weren't supposed to die. So the true natural thing is that people shouldn't die. Now it's been this way for thousands of years. So obviously that is the natural order, the way we know now. But the way God created the world is that people shouldn't die. But what was God telling Adam and Eve? That on the day you eat from the tree, the process of dying will begin. And that's why we see text 9b, the sweat of your brow you shall eat bread. And also, because if you think about it, what's the connection to eating from a tree and death and sweat of your brow? And the woman had a hard time in labor. So the Torah is explained to us that death isn't the natural order of things. Death is the glitch in the system. It's what happened when Adam contaminated the system with his actions. That's really what it is, and that's why the prophet says in text number 10, when Mashiach comes, it doesn't say the world is going to be supernatural. We're all going to grow wings and be able to travel in time, but it does say God will eradicate. This is text 10, 225. God will eradicate death forever and wipe off tears from every face. So this tells us a few things. Number one, death necessarily isn't bad. It reminds us that we have a job to do. Now, we're not looking to go there, and obviously, it's very, very painful for the family. But now we view it as negative because it's a sign of humankind's imperfection. But so the way the Torah is viewing it is as the world is. I'm trying to get my slideshow back. Hold on a second. No. The world is misaligned, and what we really, I'm gonna close the slideshow 1 second, and restart it because I'm having a hard time here. The world is misaligned, and let's see if that'll work. Yeah, there you go. There you go. Sorry about that. I had some technical difficulties. So what happened? What was the difference before the sin and after the sin? Why was death a result of eating from the tree of knowledge? So when God created Adam and Eve, and he instilled and he implanted the soul into the soul and the body were in perfect sync with each other. The body was a vehicle for all godly actions. So therefore, a person didn't feel any negative thing in his body. Thus, Adam and Eve walked around without clothing because there was nothing wrong with their body. The body was selfless, and the body's only desire was to do what the will of God, because all it was a vehicle for what the soul wanted. And the body had no will of its own. Body had the better ego. But once Adam and Eve ate from the tree, once they ate from the tree of knowledge, and it introduced the ego. Where are we? So now the body is a separate entity. Going back to lesson 1, how did we describe death? It's not an end. How did we describe death? Is there a way to erase these red lines on the screen? Anybody remember?
Transition.
Here you go. Or a different word. The moment of death. What happens at the moment of death? You guys remember this? Keyword.
Which week was it?
I think it was 1 or 2. It was 2. Week 2. The key word over there was separation, right? We said the soul separates from the body. So after the sin of the golden calf, where are we? After the sin of the golden calf, my mouse. After the sin of the golden calf, sorry, last week's portion. The sin of the tree of knowledge, what happened was the soul was separated from the body. And because it's not fused with the body like it was when it was initially created, now the body can go against God's will. Now the body has desires of its own. Now the body it feels itself as something separate from the soul. No longer is it just a vehicle. So it's not in line with the soul. So what's Misa? Misa is separation. Death is separation. Death means you're separated from God. Death means the body is separated from the soul. So if we were to realign everything, then death would be eradicated. Let's look at text 11. Text 11, the Rebbe explains the condition of death that was introduced into the world through the sin of the tree of knowledge was a natural consequence of sin itself. To explain, life is associated exclusively with holiness. Unholiness, on the other hand, is death. What does it mean unholy? Unholy means separated from God, i.e. death. As a result of the sin of the tree of knowledge, unholiness, spiritual death, mingled with the human identity. from which the condition of physical death is a natural eventual consequence. So sin caused the spiritual death, and that because the body and the soul together, that resulted in a physical death. The good news is that this process is reversible, like the prophet Isaiah told us. The question is, you might ask, how? All right, let's get into it. But any questions before I just finish off these last points? Because I'll interrupt you if you need to. You know, there's a reason why you're supposed to eat, and there's the fact that you eat, right? You should really only eat food that's beneficial for you. But how many of us just eat food that we should? So there's the soul of why you eat for nourishment, and then there's the body of why you eat, like, right? So the soul is the true purpose, and then there's the body is the superficial part of it. So before Adam and Eve ate from the tree of knowledge, those two things were together. Once they ate, it's separated. So what do we got to do? We have to now do things for the real purpose. What we have to do is we have to utilize the physical world around us, just like Adam and Eve were supposed to. Use it for a godly purpose. And when all of us take it upon ourselves to make just a small effort for us to do what we're supposed to, we rectify the spiritual death, and then we bring Mashiach closer, which will eradicate the physical death. And this is why the belief in the resurrection of the dead is one of the fundamentals of Judaism. And going back to what we said, I think it was class 3, it's not a good idea or a nice idea. It's the fundamentals, which means without it, you can't have Judaism. Why is the resurrection of the death so important? That's the fundamental concept in Judaism. Because if the souls don't come into a body, that means we never rectified, we never fixed that original mistake. God created the world with soul and body, and they were perfectly aligned. If we can't fix that alignment issue, then we haven't fixed the world. We haven't done the true purpose of why we're here. Text number 12, the Rambam writes, the resurrection of the dead is a foundation of the Torah of Moses. One cannot maintain a connection to the Jewish religion and Jewish nation without these beliefs. So why are we here? We're here to get to that point. We are here to get to the point to bring Mashiach closer, to bring Mashiach here when the realization, when the body and soul will be realigned, which means when we will see something, not just for the superficial, but for the very purpose of why it was here. And that's why, to quote this letter for the third time, the Rebbe wrote to Ariel Sharon. Remember, we quoted this letter twice already. Text number 13. He said, the kernel of consolations, page 228. It's captured in the traditional hallowed statement and the consolation used by all the generations, been omnipresent, console you amongst the mourners of Zion and Jerusalem. What's the connection? Just like Zion will be rebuilt, and just like Zion, the Jews will be gathered from all four corners of the earth, with righteous Mashiach, we are equally confident that the same is true with regard to a personal bereavement. God will fulfill his promise, and that those who dwell in the dust shall awake and joyfully sing. Great indeed will be the happiness and rejoicing then, when we all meet together after the resurrection of the dead. The exercise, record a point from today's lesson that resonates with you most. Recognizing that life is limited, what can you do to optimize your time? I want to go back to the beginning of today's lesson. Anyone want to share on the chat or via video for everyone to benefit from? Over the past 6 weeks, what is something that has stuck with you? And you've learned something with. That's something you can take with you. Anybody? Come on, guys, don't be shy. I've been talking for the past 6 weeks. There is no bad, stupid answer. Come on, guys. Someone share something. Don't make me start calling you in person. Larry, all of a sudden you're shy to talk?
Don't be bashful.
Don't be bashful, all right? Very good. Act now. Yes. Where's Steve?
Act now or forever keep your peace.
Yeah. Ellen, what about you?
I have a question. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's fine.
All right. Question? Go ahead. We'll do questions.
Yes. This is Emmanuel. My question is actually, if eventually we leave our body and we do not come back to this world, isn't it that we finally have achieved everything we were supposed to achieve?
I'm sorry, but the beginning of your question, if we accomplish everything we were supposed to, we don't come back, we do come back. At the time of the Mashiach, we come back. Right,
time of Mashiach. But in the meantime, our souls are coming back in different bodies.
Right.
So eventually, hopefully, we'll achieve what we were supposed to accomplish in this world before Mashiach time. So don't we want to just go back there until Mashiach comes? Just to be...
I'm sorry, I'm not understanding.
Because you were saying that the separation is such a bad thing between the soul and the body.
Yes, when the soul is pulling in one direction toward the service of God, and the body is pulling the other direction towards indulgent and activities, that creates a friction. The perfect harmony would be when the soul needs the body to perform a mitzvah. So the body should be totally nullified, totally subservient to the soul. That's the perfect harmony. That is not now. That's going to happen. It's going to happen later.
Okay.
Did I answer the question? You know, by the way, you remind me, there's a line, I forgot which one of the Lubavitcher Rebbeim said. And he said, when Mashiach comes, we are going to yet yearn for the days of the exile, when we realize just how precious this time is, how much good we can accomplish. And we will look back at this time and say, oy vey, how foolish was I that I wasted this time. So we gotta, like Gabriel said, we gotta act now. Ellen,
I guess my takeaway would be thinking about more like what was my purpose, what has been my purpose here, you know, and that's maybe more of a takeaway for me, you know, that kind of thought.
Right, and then utilize it for.
Yeah, make those, you know, assessments and try to figure out what I can do going forward.
Right, you know, it says that, I know we're 6 months away from Rosh Hashanah. It says in the month of Elul, the previous Rebbe writes that just like when you own a store, a business has to take inventory and see what's doing well, what's not. We personally also have to take inventory in our own lives to see, you know, what we are doing well and what we can act better. Leon, takeaway.
Good class, thought-provoking.
A lesson that you can take away with you.
Absolutely, absolutely.
You want to share with us?
No, I'm just absorbing what you're telling us.
All right, Esther, come on, Esther, you got to have something to say. Esther, share with us. Esther, Michael J, come on, you guys are usually very interactive. What's going on with the day? You didn't get a full night's rest last night? You're
Exactly. It's been a very long 2 weeks.
very long 2 weeks, huh?
Yeah,
All right,
this-
maybe I'll give you a chance. Well, think about your loved ones when they have to live without you and help yourself live. Yes, yeah, exactly. All right, I'm going to now take this opportunity to show you the promo for next course coming up after Pesach. Good stuff. Watch this. Oh, 1 second. The ultimate answer is about a boss. Okay. So we spend a lot of time talking about
Lesson 6.
Perfecting our world to bring Mashiach. Next course is going to talk about how do we do to actually bring Mashiach. Key points, lesson 6.
Lesson 6. Life is short-ish. 1. Our exploration of death and the afterlife through the Torah's lens reduces our fear and unease, allowing us to consider our mortality without panic. 2. Some believe that because we eventually die, nothing is overly important. But Judaism insists that because we die, each moment of life is of supreme importance and should be devoted to matters of eternal relevance. Considering our mortality motivates us to focus on what really matters. 3. Our natural illusion of immortality spurs us to consider time as dispensable. We care more about wasted money than wasted time. Reflecting on life's finitude replaces this illusion with an urgency to take advantage of each moment. 4. We are designed to be productive beings. Retirement is not a Jewish concept. As our brute powers wane, we should transition to mentoring, sharing our wisdom and experience, etc. 5. Before the sin of the tree of knowledge, the body was the soul's extension, and their desires were synced. Sin destroyed that dynamic, causing spiritual death, the misalignment of body and soul. Physical death is an outgrowth of spiritual death. 6. We rectify spiritual death by realigning everything with its purpose, ignoring the superficial layers of a thing, its body, and instead focusing on its inner truth and purpose, soul. Upon completing this rectification, physical death will no longer be part of the human condition.
All right, guys, thank you so much for joining us on the journey. I hope you enjoyed it. Enjoy the feedback. Obviously, the class will be recorded. Please send it to your friends. Let's get more people learning Torah, increase in acts of goodness and kindness. Let's all gather together to bring Mashiach. And like we say in the Passover Seder, which is coming up next year in Jerusalem, but this year in Jerusalem. So have a kosher friendly Pesach. If anyone needs shmur matzah, please reach out to me, or I'm going to reach out to you. All the best. Really appreciate you spending all this time with me. It's been a learning experience. Au revoir.
Thank you so much, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.
See you
Thank
tomorrow.
you.
Thank you, Rabbi.